James Melendez, James the Wine Guy. This topic is about the best of wine times, and I wish we lived in the best of wine distribution times. Stay tuned. Now, simply this, I have said many times, and I will never take this back, which is I think we live in the best of wine times. That is the best of wine quality times, the best of wine, I would say, artistically driven wine times. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to get better. It will. But in addition to that, I used to say, and it's through experience you come upon a different opinion, I used to say we live in the best of wine distribution times. And to some degree we do. That is, I get wines in the city of San Francisco, where I'm based out of. I get wines from Israel, from Lebanon, Republic of Georgia, Turkey, and so forth. So from the furthest reaches, Peru, Argentina, Uruguay, and it goes on and on and on. So for this video, it was because of this wine right here that I actually had to change my mind about the best of wine distribution times. Now I'm going to do a separate review of this wine, and it's nothing negative about this wine. It's about where the wine is coming from. So you're going to see here that this is coming from Canada, Ontario, Lincoln Lakeshore VQA. Now the reason this came about was I was thinking of this all differently, which is Ontario is, say it's a lot closer than the Republic of Georgia or Bulgaria or Romania or Australia and so forth. And yet it is infinitely more difficult to get any wine from Ontario with the exception of ice wines. And so if I could simply get a wine like this just shipped to me, I would be really happy with that, right? And there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't exist. And part of that is I'm going to begin with, I've talked about what if Prohibition never existed, so I'll place that video right here. I think Prohibition was really destructive in many ways because we still live with this antiquated notion, even with the 21st Amendment in the United States, with this notion of about 40,000 different separate wine distribution or alcohol beverage control laws, and that is outmoded unto itself. There are so many examples, and I've been a wine marketing manager off-premise, which is also, you do very little wine marketing in some ways because all you're worrying about is all the laws that govern the alcohol beverage control laws. So I'm going to put this wine on the side because it'll be discussed in another review, and it's not to do anything other than show why, for me, I've been struggling to get to this wine, and that's because I'm afraid to open it up. Because it's going to be so hard to get another bottle from this producer or other producers from Ontario. It shouldn't be that way. It's really close. And so there, I looked at my queue. So I keep a queue of the wines that I'm going to review. And when I looked at that, I kept putting this one back. I kept moving, 5 or 10 wines ahead of it. And I'm like, why am I doing that? And it's simply this. It's going to be really hard to go back to Ontario. And not just hard to get to Ontario, it's easy. There's a nonstop flight between SFO and Pearson. Easy to do. More difficult to do is get to a specific winery to pick up the wines because I can't find a location, say, within Toronto to buy that. So that got me to think about this whole topic differently. So the 21st Amendment repeals the 18th Amendment. Now, 18th Amendment, of course, is prohibition. It is what does not allow any sort of alcoholic beverage to be distributed whatsoever. So only a very few exceptions, sacramental wines for personal or familial use and medicinal purposes, and the third one is a really tricky, slippery slope. And it was really an abuse of prohibition. It didn't work. It wasn't being enforced. And ultimately, you can look at the overwhelmingly large number of states that voted for the 21st Amendment. So beginning April 10 of 1933, Michigan was the first state to repeal prohibition, and ending, and believe it or not, the last state, the 36th state to do so, was Utah, and that was on the 5th of December. Two other states who ratified by convention, that is Maine and Montana. We have one state that rejected the 21st Amendment, that is South Carolina, and one state next door that rejected to hold a convention about the 21st Amendment, North Carolina. There were 8 states that took no action, and I can look at my alcohol beverage control experience, and those are the states that were really difficult even to this very moment. And so therein lies some of the conundrum of the ABC. So basically, alcohol beverage control was really a result of the 21st Amendment. So it really comes down to the states, then to the county, then to special governments, then to city, and then particular zones within a city could regulate alcohol differently than any other part of that particular state. And so San Diego County, actually a particular area called the Gaslamp District, because of my experience with the off-premise retailer, had a store in the Gaslamp District that did not allow for, believe it or not, screw caps. Kind of silly because, I try to talk through the logic. What was that? It is just one of these antiquated notions that maybe it's a certain population that might go in a store, open that up, and start drinking. But think about this. Wouldn't you go for something like a spirit at 40% ABV? Well, you probably would. So in the state of Missouri, you can't even have a sale. Well, you can have a sale, but you just can't advertise it. What's the purpose of that? So in Ohio, it is a 100% markup. So it's, this coterie of laws that were just absolutely ridiculous. So what comes from that is there's also difficulty in getting wines distributed throughout the United States. So for example, getting a wine, I tried to get a wine from Delaware and Maryland, and I found somebody who was, a producer, and I said, can I order a bottle? No, I'm so sorry, we don't have a California license to export it from Delaware, Maryland to California. And it just made me think, wow, that's pretty ridiculous. And the same thing could be true for, say, it could be legal to receipt wine from California from Delaware, but ultimately, unless you have a license from that small producer in California, that particular resident of Delaware or Maryland or wherever may not get that bottle of wine because they don't have a license. So it's this whole coterie of absolutely absurd laws that exist, and something that really went beyond the scope of what I think the 21st Amendment was to do. It made things bureaucratically difficult. It's probably the only category of alcohol, which is wine, beer, and spirits, that is the most regulated of any product in the entire planet. So you can go anywhere else in the world and you have freer distribution than you do here. Canada is often cited as being one of these countries also that's difficult to get wine. And this wine in particular here, it's very small production, I think about 177 cases in total, is simply this. So if I get to Ontario, I definitely will visit Toronto, hopefully in the near future. But I really don't know if I can be able to get to Niagara Peninsula, where this producer is located. Now, I can't go to a state store, a provincial store, which is the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, the LCBO, one of the largest retailers on the entire planet. And so when I think of that, they have to, I think there's a requirement between 2,000 and 5,000 cases per individual wine. So if you have a producer like this, it won't hit the shelf of the LCBO. So, for me, it's a bittersweet, and that's why this particular wine just keeps, going down in terms of the queue, and that's not because I don't want to drink it, that's not because I didn't enjoy it, I loved it, I bought the bottle. But ultimately, therein lies some of the conundrums. Between the US and Canada, there's always some sort of trade dispute, and unfortunately, wine is usually at the crosshairs of those disputes, not because it's a problem in itself, it's just that this, it's held to other issues in the agricultural zone, for example, or product zone, and that's really unfortunate. So NAFTA really did not help in this category at all, though it really prompted, say, Ontario and British Columbia to produce more vitis vinifera wines. So Canada, very close, especially to California, when I'm thinking of BC, just up the street, up the coast, if you will. I like to get wines from that province. In addition, I'd like to get wines from Ontario and Quebec. And so for me, it's really, really, that's the vision, that's the hope. And there's nothing rocket science about this. In fact, there should be nothing rocket science about wine or beer or spirits distribution. It's something that should be a level playing field, and especially when you think of things like NAFTA. So more subject matter videos to come, as well as individual bottle reviews. So stay tuned for that. Do me a favor, give a like to the video, which is right down there. So click on the like button, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. Click right there, and stay tuned for many more reviews to come. Let's also stay connected. You can list your questions and comments down below, and you can also do that on a variety of social medias that I'm on, such as Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram and WordPress. Thank you for watching today. Stay tuned for more. Salud.